Hello everybody, today we are going to learn how to cite in MLA format, which will be required for all of your papers in this Composition 1 course. Alright, first off, why do you need to write your paper in MLA? The primary answer here is consistency. If you understand how MLA works, then you understand how a paper is organized when it's written in MLA. So, here's a good example of why consistency is important in academia. Do you know when the first dictionary was published? I'm going to bet probably not. It was written by Samuel Johnson and published in 1755, which when I looked that up, honestly, was a lot later than I thought it was going to be. I thought they would have been publishing them much earlier. This was called a Dictionary of the English Language. Before dictionaries, spelling was not standardized. Everyone made up how things were spelled based on phonetics, which is the study of classifications of speech sounds. So let's look at some examples of this. Let's say we have Spain. There were actually many spellings of Spain before dictionaries came out. So we have somewhat close to what we have currently, S-P-A-I-N-E. The current spelling, S-P-A-I-N, but also S-P-A-Y-N-E. And technically, in regards to phonetics, those all end up sounding the same when you say them. If you ever read something that was written before standardized spelling and it hasn't been updated with standardized spelling, it's actually very difficult to read them because you have to spend a lot of time trying to figure out what they're saying with their words because every word is spelt a little differently. Even sometimes the same word would be spelt differently by the same person later on in their writing. Another reason why you use MLA in college writing is credibility. This allows you to show where your claims came from in a method that is consistent, because again, the most important thing for citations is consistency. It's easy to find a source that is in a works cited page in an MLA paper because you know how to read and understand that citation. If everyone was citing things however they wanted, it would be difficult to find what sources people are citing, and in some cases, potentially impossible. First thing about credibility. Never believe something just because someone told you so. Always check that source, especially when writing a rhetorical analysis or research paper. Next, understanding MLA allows you to fact check claims people make. So first off, if someone is basically using the claim, "Trust me, bro," do not trust that source. That is typically a very bad source. Don't trust it. But then again, when you're fact checking, if they're not using "Trust me, bro," you can check on it. You can look at what they're citing. Is the claim true? Is what they're citing actually true? You can also look and see if the author correctly interpreted their results. Now, sometimes the interpretation might not be correct, and this could be for one of two reasons. One, if we're assuming just, general negligence, the author didn't understand the source, and they thought they did, so they cite it, but they misunderstood it. The other one is more of the manipulative appeal to logos that we talked about with the rhetorical analysis, and that is that they do know what the source means, but they are intentionally misrepresenting that source in order to back up their claim. Another reason to use MLA is it helps you avoid plagiarism. Do not pass off someone else's ideas as your own, even accidentally. Accidental plagiarism is the most common type of plagiarism, especially in academia. If you are missing a citation, whether on your works cited page or an in-text citation, you are committing accidental plagiarism. So it's very, very important to use MLA citations appropriately. All right, you don't have to figure out how to cite something all on your own, nor do you have to memorize how MLA citations work. All you have to do is know where to get the information on the citations that you need. I have a master's degree and I have not memorized how citations work. Some of them I sort of remember, but overall I still reference things. Here is where you can get help if you're having trouble with your MLA citations. First, the Academic Support Center. Oakland Community College has an academic support center with tutors, and they allow for in-person but also online appointments. And you can make one just to go over your citations with someone. Next, Purdue OWL. Purdue OWL is the bread and butter of anybody who cites. I use this all the time, all throughout my academic career, and even now when I teach and I make cited pages for my PowerPoints, I'm still using Purdue OWL. Purdue OWL has guides for the most common citation styles, including MLA. As you can see from this screenshot here, they have a lot of different sections that you can use. They have pages dedicated to formatting citations. So they have general format, the style guides, they have in-text citations for the basics. Then they also have MLA formatting depending on where the source came from. So if it came from my book or a scholarly journal or a web publication or anything else like that, they have it on here. They also have sample papers so you can see how an MLA paper should look because, again, organization and consistency is very important here. They also have an example works cited page and more than I could actually fit on here with all these screenshots. Another place you can get help is the OCC librarians. You can go to the library in person and ask for help, or you can utilize the Ask a Librarian form on the library's webpage. It's also really good there. And don't forget, you can ask me. I can look over your citations, I can explain things that you didn't really understand, and I can help you with any general formatting. Formatting is my jam. I am a very type A person, so I'm very, very good with the formatting. So feel free to reach out and ask me for any help you need there. All right, there are two general types of citations, the in-text citation and the works cited page. Let's look at the works cited page first. So, in-text citations are used in your paper, in your sentences and your paragraphs. The purpose of an in-text citation is to distinguish between what are your ideas and what are someone else's ideas. This is how to avoid plagiarism, by making it very clear where someone else's ideas end and your own ideas begin. Do not take accidental ownership of someone else's ideas. Be careful to properly utilize your in-text citations. Next, we have a works cited page. This will be the first page after your paper. It gets its own page. Even if all you have is a single source, it gets its own page. The works cited page is where you list every single source that you used in your paper. All right. When should you use an in-text citation? The answer is cite when relevant. Okay, but what does that mean? Do you have to use a citation when saying something like fire is hot? The idea behind citations is that you don't have to cite common knowledge. For example, that fire is hot, or that George Washington was the first president of the United States. But how do you know when something counts as common knowledge? To be honest, you must use your best judgment. Keep your audience in mind. Not everyone knows who George Washington is. Perhaps if your audience is non-Americans, you should cite that bit of knowledge. When in doubt, cite it. There is a gray area between common knowledge and something that needs to be cited. So if you're in doubt, look it up and just cite it. All right. A universally bad source is I just know this. I know a lot of things personally, but I cannot cite my own memory as proof of this. The only time you should ever trust someone who is citing their own knowledge on a topic is when you are reading primary research that has been done by an expert. Do not refer to your own knowledge as a source unless you are an expert. And if you are an expert, you must show your credibility in your paper or in your biographical information. An example here would be myself. A lot of the stuff I use here, I do have citations for, but some of it just comes from my own expertise in writing studies. And my proof for that is that I have a degree in that. And I tell you guys about that at the beginning of the semester so you can be assured that I am an expert and qualified to tell you about these things. All right, works cited page. We're going to look at how to cite some of the more common sources that you'll be using. First off, let's look at a scholarly article. So here is the format, and I did pull these straight from Purdue OWL. So you put the author or author's names, its surname, and then comma, first name. If you have multiple authors, you do list them out. The title of article here. Now, I want to point out that when you are doing citations, you have to pay very close attention on where you have italics, if it's a period or a comma, where quotation marks are. These things are very important. The formatting has to be exact when it comes to works cited pages and in-text citations. So here, after the author, it's period. The title of the article is in quotation marks. The article itself, other than like the transitional words and stuff like of, it's all capitalized. The title of the journal it's been published in is in italics with a comma. You write volume, issue, year, and pages. Let's look at an example of how a finished citation in a scholarly article would look. Here we have. All right, now this is all in italics. I'm not sure what PowerPoint's doing here, but so the only thing you would really have in here in the italics is the title of the journal. So this would be Duval John N. And yes, if they have a middle initial available, you do put that in there after their first name. And the title here, The Supermarket of Images, Television as Unmediated Mediation, and DeLillo's White Noise. This is from the Arizona Quarterly. That would be the only thing that actually is in italics. Volume 50, number 3. Note here that volume is VOL dot the number, comma, and then NO dot 3 for those. You don't just put the numbers. You do have to shorten volume and number. Then you have the year, and then the pages. The PP dot indicates that it's more than one page. P dot is one page. PP dot is more than one page. And then you just have the page number. This is important for a scholarly article because it's a lot of different articles in there. And so there are articles that are before page 127 and probably after 153. So this tells you where in the volume and where in this article, where in the publication is this particular article located. Next, let's take a look at a book. So here, it's their last name and first name. This follows the exact same format for the scholarly article, including the middle initial if they have one. Now, the title of the book is in italics. Books are interesting in MLA because everything else is in quotation marks for titles, but books are in italics for some reason. You then would list the city of the publication, comma, the publisher, comma, and then the publication date. For the date, you typically just need the year, not anything like the month or the day. Let's take a look at an example here. I actually decided one of my favorite books, Sanderson Brandon. He doesn't have a middle initial there, so it's not included. The Way of Kings, New York, a tour book in 2010. I recommend it if you're into fantasy. All right, next, let's take a look at something else that will be very common, especially in your rhetorical analysis, a web page. So for the web page, you use the author, the name of the site, name of the institution or organization affiliated with the site. Sometimes they're the same thing, so you don't have to switch that up. The date the resource was created, if it's available. If it's not, just don't include it. The URL, and then the date of access. And the way you put dates here would be for the date that it was published or created, and the date of access would be the day, the month, and then the year. Let's look at an example here. So I use this one in particular. This is from Purdue OWL's website, and this one didn't actually have a author here, which is I use specifically because you will probably be using web pages that don't have authors' names. If that's the case, you cut out the author name and you just immediately put in the title there. So Athlete's Foot Topic Overview in italics, WebMD, published 25th of September, 2014. There's the URL right there. And yes, sometimes you will have a very big URL. Still put the URL in there, even if it's very long. And then the date of access, which they did not include on Purdue OWL here, but you would include that for yourself. The idea here is that links change, pages are updated, and therefore if you have a citation and something in the page changes and that's like not there anymore, you're like, well, the update happened on this time and I accessed it before that. So it was accurate when I did cite it. So that's why you include date of access, because unlike books where you can just keep your old copy, web pages change a lot. All right, let's look at how to format a works cited page. So here's an example one from a paper that I wrote once. Actually, wait, no, I think this one is from Purdue Owl. Yeah, this one's from Purdue Owl. All right. So you can tell what kind of source each one is because of the way it is cited. Again, consistency really helps here. For example, the first one by Dean Cornelia. Let's look at that. New York Times. Okay, this is a New York Times article. Next one by Herbert Roger. Incoherent Truth. Okay, there's URL. So that one's also a web page. The next one, let's see, we got the name, Economics of Sustainability, International Journal. Okay, that's a scholarly article. Next one, Harris, Robin, Andrew, the New York Times. Okay, that's a New York Times article. And An Inconvenient Truth, directed in Paramount. That's a film, a documentary, I believe. Leroux and Marshall, Myth Reality. Okay, I think at that point I actually didn't screenshot the entirety of that last one there by Leroux. So I can't really tell what that one is. Oh, well, it's in the title is in italics, so probably a book. So you can see that because of the consistency, I can look at this Purdue Owl Works Cited example page. I haven't actually looked these up before, and I can already tell what they are because of the way they are formatted. That's one of the powers of using citations in MLA and not just however you want to. All right. Again, Works Cited page gets its own page, regardless of how many sources you actually used. So, the words Works Cited, you'll notice here, are centered at the top. They're not bolded. They're not italicized. It's just centered and at the top. You will need to use a hanging indent. So usually you use just a normal indent. So the first line of your paragraphs are indented. A hanging indent is basically the opposite of that. You will need to use that solely for the Works Cited page. You'll notice here on this example that on the left side you have the last names being jutted out to the left. That's the result of a hanging indent. So let's look really quick how to do this both in Word and in Google Docs. Let's look at Word first. So in Word, you have a little box at the top called Paragraph. And in the bottom right-hand area, you have a little arrow that points to like the bottom right-hand corner. Click on that, and this box pops up. And in the box, you have this thing. You can select the indentation. So you want the left and right to be 0. And the special, if it's your regular paper, you change that to first line. And for the Works Cited, you just change that there to hanging. It will automatically put it by 0.5 inches there, no matter which one you do. So you don't have to change that. It should automatically be updated as long as you have a pretty recent update of Word. You just have to change it to hanging. Google Docs is a little different. So in Google Docs, you would go to the formatting part and you would find where it says indentation options. You go there, you can select them, or you can do like more, choosing your own ones. So you would do that, like the more options. You come here. So again, left and right, it looks a little different, but it's the exact same information. Left and right should be 0. You select the special indent, hanging, or first line, and the 0.05 inches should immediately pop up there. That is how it defaults. And then you just click apply. And that's how you get your Works Cited page. All right. What information do you put on your in-text citations, though? Okay, that depends on the Works Cited page. That's why it's best to start with your Works Cited page, so that way you know exactly what to put in the in-text citations. This is why you use a hanging indent. I highlighted the stuff on the left here. You see that part, it sticks out there. The part that sticks out on the left from the hanging indent is what you will use in your in-text citations. So, last name and the page number. So that way, if you have a book or you're citing a scholarly article, nobody has to figure out which page it's on. They can just, it's on the 5th page, and then they just have to look through the one page. So always include the page number. Now, if you're using a web page, they often don't have page numbers, but often they also won't be quite as long. So you would just put the last name of the person there. So you'll see here, if we had one from that first source there, Dean Cornelia, if you're going to do an in-text citation, you would just put in parentheses Dean 5. No comma in between the name and the number, just Dean 5. Okay, now what if you don't have an author? That's actually kind of common, especially if you have, say, a Wikipedia article, a lot of articles on certain websites. They're kind of made by a lot of people at the job and updated by a lot of different people, so they don't put author names on there. So for this, let's take the example of that Gowdy John article. That's the third one down. Let's pretend that one wasn't written by an author. How would you cite it in text citation if you didn't have an author? You just had the title there. Well, you would use the article title. Now, one of the things you want to make sure is that you don't use the full title because that's kind of too long. What you want to use is 2 or 4 words of the title and sort of cut it off after that. So for this one, you could do avoiding self-organized extinction, but I chose to do avoiding self-organized. There's really no hard and fast rule here, except do not just use one word. Try to use 2 to 4 words about, but again, this is also a use your best judgment sort of situation here. All right, lastly, punctuation. Punctuation is very important when it comes to citations. So for an in-text citation, you put the punctuation on the outside of the parentheses. For example, let's say you're referring to something in the Dean article. After you make the statement, you have Dean 5 in parentheses. Then on the period there, you'll see is on the outside of the parentheses. It's not on after outdated. It's after the parentheses. That is where the period or the comma would go. Also, it may be counterintuitive, but if it ends in like a question mark, if it's like an in-text citation, if it's a quote and you have a question mark there, that also goes on the outside of the parentheses. And I still feel like that's kind of counterintuitive, but that is how you do it. Punctuation always goes on the outside. Next, when do you use an in-text citation? Anytime you have summarized or paraphrased someone else's ideas. Remember, you need to make a clear distinguish between what's your ideas and what's someone else's ideas. So if you summarize or paraphrase someone else, you need to cite them. Now, also use it whenever you make a claim. So that way you can show that there's evidence. You're making a claim. You're not bringing it out of nowhere. Your source here isn't just trust me. It came from this study. So if you'd said something like studies show that car crashes are twice as likely if the driver is texting, you would need to put a citation after that. In fact, anytime you use the phrase studies show, you should put an in-text citation. You also would use an in-text citation directly after you quote someone. Even if it's in the middle of a sentence, if you quote someone, you must immediately use an in-text citation after that quotation mark there. Immediately, you must. All right. You do not always need to use the author's surname in your in-text citation if you first mention that the idea is coming from said author. Here's an example. First, we're going to introduce Kenneth Burke, who is an influential rhetorician from the 19th century, and we're going to then quote him. So, Kenneth Burke, an influential 20th century rhetorician, describes human beings as symbol-using animals. And then the quote. Now, right after the quote, we have the citation, and because we mentioned it, we just have to put the page number we got it from. Now, let's say later in your paper you mention Burke again, but you don't say his name. So it's worth deconstructing the term symbol as it meant in the 20th century and its common connotations today. And here, because you didn't introduce Burke in a sentence, you would put Burke 3. This is very important if you have more than one author that you're citing, so that way you cannot just make it clear what's your ideas and someone else's ideas, but what ideas belong to which person. That concludes the presentation for MLA Citations. Please don't forget to reach out if you need any help with your citations this semester. I can always look them over. Don't forget you have the ASC, the librarians, and Purdue OWL to help you. There's a lot of resources out there. Please make sure you're using them, and please keep me up to date if you need any assistance.